So I wrote 2 sample chapters. First time I'd ever in my life done that. Never considered myself a writer. Never even considered myself really a storyteller. I was a special operations infantry officer. What kind of storyteller is that, right? So I wrote what I wrote and I sent it to them and they said, we want to contract you to write your story. And I agreed to do that. It didn't take, I swear to you, within 5 days, that information was across the intelligence community. Which leads me to my point is that in the print world and other media world, there are members of the agency. They are either employees of the CIA or they are individuals who, for remuneration or something else, feed information back to the CIA. So as soon as that idea was being tossed around on the wire, the phones and stuff, right, and an email, the elevation of what was going on around me started to intensify. And as you know, it ultimately got to the point where even when the decision was made in 93 and then when the contract was signed in 94, now you started seeing these Washington Post articles and all this other stuff flying out. If you look at the timeline for that, it is the CIA who had already tried their damnedest to try to stop the book, and they tried to stop the book, desperately tried to stop the book. As soon as it was in the hands of St. Martin's, there were people that were getting copies of the galley prints that were then sending them out, and Paul Smith was part of, writing a letter on there that said, this is his book, and here's his publishers. Call them right away and tell them it's not true and try to stop it. That was what was going on. Guys I used to think were at least good acquaintances or friends, or, Paul was a member of the church. I mean, all these things started to happen. And I got feedback from Lynn Buchanan, who heard one of the CIA guys talking in a meeting. And they said, Lynn tells me, he goes, one of the things the CIA said is, the weakness in Morehouse's philosophy is that he thought he had friends. He has no friends in this. And that was damn true. That sure showed up. And the intensity. Well,
if you're the CIA, your mission is simple, right? You have a bunch of people who worked in the remote viewing program who the wedge is obvious, which is this guy's going to make all the money that you guys could have made. So why are you supporting him? Right? Easy wedge for the CIA to exploit.
Yeah. And, the dereliction of duty, wrongful disclosure of classified information was the tool handed to the commander of the 82nd.
Right.
We were already like this, right? And so the sneaky part of that was that I was legally separated from my wife and had been for close to 3 years, I guess, give or take a few months. And we specifically put into our separation agreement that we could not, what was the term? And it meant that we could see each other people if we wanted to. And we could not, the term is molest. You cannot molest the other person for seeing somebody. It was in there, right? And I thought, all was good. And I actually dated a woman who was separated from her husband. And I dated her for like 2 months, 2.5 months.
Yeah, CIA went right after that, guaranteed. It's a point of leverage, right?
Absolutely.
Credibility, trustworthiness.
In the UCMJ manual, did you know that you can be legally separated? Mm-hmm. And if there is proof of intimacy, that you can be court-martialed for adultery. Did you know that?
Yep.
I didn't know that. I've been to Command General Staff College, our infantry officer advanced course. I've been there and I paid attention in the law classes.
But you're separated, but you're still technically married, right? You didn't have the divorce yet.
No, but yeah. I had no idea. And anybody else I've ever talked to, except you, were all like, no, I had no idea. Yeah. In fact, the lieutenant colonel, when I was in the special access program, Torn Image, that lieutenant colonel, Art something, Art Spangler, something. He was the guy when he knew I was getting separated, even before Command General Staff College, etc. He goes, it's got to look like this. Here's mine. So he goes, have the lawyer make it like this because then you'll be okay. And so that all that wording was in there for both my estranged wife and I. And she was a really good wife. She was a great Army wife. The issue was me. I had changed, and I was living alone, and went to Command General Staff College alone, and did an MMAS alone, and came back to the 82nd, was in the 82nd alone, and living in rented rooms and crap like that, just being focused on my job and the mission. And I have basically emotionally abandoned her. I mean, to be very frank about it, I ended up being a shitty husband and probably an even shittier father, to pardon my language. I admit that in my, in reflection of my life, that was a regret, to have done that. I'm extraordinary friends with my son, who's the command sergeant major. I talked to one of my daughters talks to me and another one won't talk to me. But I understand that, that's the condition I created. So
the CIA with this relationship, what did they do?
Well, they drew up the CIA didn't, but they were, of course, pouring poison in the ear of the court-martial authority, which was the guy, right, that didn't like me, and I didn't like him. And so what ended up happening is I get called up to the chief of staff's office, and he goes, hey, man, they're going to prefer charges against you for adultery. And then everything they can think of that might fit in that, right, that might go in with adultery, which they have a bevy of things they can toss in there, which are frightening when you see them, because you're thinking, God, if people think this is true, life is over. And I had a really good legal team. A guy I brought out of North Carolina cost me forever because I just wasn't willing to trust my fate to an Army major, JAG officer.
Right.
And he worked on the case, but
he's got two masters, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I had to have a private investigator and all this other stuff pull in this thing, and I was very confident in putting that part of this away. Basically, at this juncture, right? I'm a major promotable, and they're preferring court-martial charges against me. And I kept saying, I didn't connect the dots on what was actually getting ready to happen. I was like all gung-ho that this is gonna unfold the right way. And finally, the legal team comes in and goes, you don't understand what's getting ready to happen. As soon as this court-martial starts for adultery, that is when the floodgate opens for them to come in and throw down into the court-martial dereliction of duty, wrongful disclosure of classified information, count after count after count after count of everybody you talk to, everybody you told about this. And I guess, there are probably some of the listeners that go, well, rightly so, you bastard. You violated a security oath, which is why I have to say why I did it.
That's actually the most natural question. That was like what spurred you, because it wasn't from my interaction with you. It wasn't the financial interest in doing it. There was something else, right?
I mean that was insignificant to the overall process. That meant absolutely nothing to me, and it never has meant anything to me. The reason I did it, stay with the story part where we were, I ended up resigning. And I ended up being given an other than honorable discharge.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. Additionally, if you have any feedback, please put something in the comments below. And lastly, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, you can find it above. Thanks again for watching.